afternoon to all of you. I'm Ankita from NASCOM Product Skills. In today's session, we will be talking about on how to build a minimum viable product by Atibi Mehra, who is Associate Product Manager in Optim Global Solutions. And she's happy to share her experiential knowledge with us. And I request everyone to ask a lot of questions anytime during the session, and it will be catered by Atibi after the end of her presentation. And welcome, Atibi, over to you.
Thank you, Ankita. Yeah. So I hope everyone is safe. My voice is clear, Ankita, if you could confirm. Great.
All of you, just can you write on the chat box?
Yes. So I'll just give a brief. Okay, great. Everyone can hear me. So my background in product management spans over 15 years, primarily in creating consumer-facing products, digital experiences with companies such as Vodafone, Yahoo, Group M, healthcare startups, and now with Optim, which is part of United Health Group. At Optim, we have a strong product team that builds products across various facets of healthcare. And I lead products for a digital health portfolio company, of UHG. So I'm really happy to be here. MVP, just to let you know, is one of the most debated, one of the most controversial topics in the product world. And every product manager will have a point of view. And there are multiple Medium articles, blogs talking about what really is MVP. For the purpose of this presentation, I will stick to some core concepts of MVP through my learnings and through multiple mistakes that I have done while building digital assets. I'll also share with you some resources that you could actually use as references, as you go along. Before that, I'd just like to tell you a little bit about the company that I belong to and the organization. So United Health Group is ranks 5th in Fortune 500 companies with a revenue of over $257 billion. With a lofty mission of helping people live healthier lives and making the health system work better for everyone. UHG is the health benefit side of the business, and Optim is the health services side of the business. At Optim, we leverage data analytics, clinical expertise, and embedded technology to drive 3 of our business units, which is Optim Health, Optim Insights, and Optim RX. And we have around 25,000 professionals working out of 4 locations in India. So today we'll talk about what is MVP, who should your MVP really be targeted towards, a step-by-step guide on building an MVP, or actually it could be features to your existing products, some of the approaches that you all can use to build your MVP, and how do you really measure the success of your MVP. So before we start, this is a definition of MVP that you'll see in Wikipedia. MVP is a version of a product that has just enough features that are of use to early customers who can then provide feedback for your future product development. I'll pause for a minute and I'll just give you some time to read through this definition and highlight, 2 words or 3 words that are the crux of MVP. What's really coming out from the definition, which really defines a good MVP. And I'll pause. You may even put it on chat. You could put the words on chat. Okay. Enough early feedback. Yes. So these 2 are actually the crux. Enough, right? Really critical, because your MVP needs to be focused on the features that you want to build basis the value you want to test. And we'll come to the value, extremely critical as a concept. So just enough features and feedback. Any feedback is really important for product development process. And that feedback could be in terms of consumer feedback, whether it's through metrics, or it's through interactions with your consumers. So the feedback will actually serve as your action to your product decisions. So let's simplify this Wikipedia definition. So, MVP is essentially then the smallest thing that you can build that delivers customer value. Value versus solution. And this is really important. What this really means is your MVP is not a one-time process. An MVP will always be an iterative process where you're building, you're learning, you're building, you're measuring, and then you are actually learning and putting your learnings back into the MVP. And this concept is very well articulated and popularized by Eric Ries. And I'm sure many of you all have heard of Lean Startup. It's a community that there's a book, obviously, and then there is a community. Eric Ries has lots of videos that he talks only about this on the methodology to actually build assets through some of the learnings that he has had. So I'd like to ask you this. So this is a diagram, ABC options. From the little that we've actually spoken about MVP, I would, Ankita, if you could just put up the poll, what do you think is an ideal MVP? A, B, or C? We could have, the poll coming up.
I'm just starting the poll.
I can't see the poll, but I can see people who've put put the options on the chat. So, so many of y'all actually have put. Sorry, I'm going to go back. So many of y'all have actually put in the number C, right? And actually, C is the right answer. And let me just tell you this: many have also put B. So as I said, your process needs to be a learning curve, right? So if your end result is a 4-wheel drive, you aren't learning at the first stage if you have just a wheel. There is nothing that you can learn in terms of feedback from the consumer value. Your end result is a 4-wheel drive. Option 2, you are launching a 4-wheel drive, but the examples are of a 2-wheel. So if you have a cycle, if you were launching a bike, a bike, maybe option B on 1, 2, 3 would have been ideal. Option C is where you are actually offering minimum features to the consumer to take, understand, give feedback, and then finally launch a 4-wheel drive. And post that, you will add the bells and the whistles, which is the safety, your safety seats, your safety glass, airbags, etc. That would come post, your key value proposition that you're testing. And with this, I come to an extremely, extremely important part, and this may look complicated, but it's very simple. This is basically the diffusion of innovation theory, which was developed by E.M. Rogers 60 years back, and it still holds true. It's one of the oldest social sciences theories. And this is really important for you to understand because the definition of MVP has now evolved over time. Your consumers are exposed to more. They have really are more evolved. So this model is used to basically for new products or services, for introducing existing products to a new market, or for adapting products to market needs. So if you were launching a product, a technology, or a new innovation completely out of the whack, your market has never seen something like this. In that case, you would want to be at this tipping point. And I'm saying that because after the tipping point, that's when your growth curve really starts. And then that's when you see the adopted product really growing. So look at the examples of Facebook, Amazon, Yahoo. So these guys were really innovators at that time, right? And they were in the early market. And at that point, it is really important to focus your MVP on the visionaries, on the tech enthusiasts, on the innovators. Innovators are folks that, who would want to try the innovation for the first time, who are willing to take risks, Early adopters are people who see the vision, who see the need for the product, and they understand the value of the product. So look at Facebook. When Facebook was actually launched initially, the beta, I mean the MVP or whatever version you want to call it, was actually at Harvard, and it was not a product that was given to the entire world. It was to use, consume, and get feedback, and to consume, but it was primarily to the innovators and the early adopters. Now think of a stage now where you have reached a more mature market. So look at companies like Instagram. So Instagram launched in maybe 2010. If you look at Netflix, 2012. If you look at Uber, Uber started in 2011, 2012 in San Francisco. And Uber was really it was revolutionary at that point of time. However, now, if you were supposed to be launching a ride-hailing company, you cannot, your audience is used to a lot more. They are used to a lot of sophistication. They have a baseline exposure of the product offering. So at that point of time, you would really need to focus on your on solutions, on convenience, building above the baseline that is already present with the with your end consumers. You would need to focus on the pragmatics. You would need to focus on the skeptics. Skeptics are people who are bound by tradition, they're conservative, and they're skeptical of change. And this is the hardest group to really bring on board. Conservatives are people who will only adopt an innovation if there's a large majority who has already adopted the innovation. So the purpose of showing this graph to you is really, is to make you understand that what is minimum in your product and what is viable in your product will totally change depending on your product environment and whether you are in the early market or you are in the mainstream market. Any questions on this, you could just put it up in the chat and I'd be happy to take this, but extremely important concept to understand. So what this would really mean is that if you are in a market where a product already exists and offerings, and it's very hard to come by at this stage to get really different offerings in the market. But if you are supposed to come up with the product at this stage, in a market which is the mainstream market, you would need to have more than functionality. You'll need to have your product will need to be functional for sure. It will need to be reliable. It needs to be usable. It cannot be just a prototype that is handed over. And there has to be an element of delightfulness in the product for you to really understand consumer feedback. This is beautifully articulated by Aaron Walters in this book called Designing for Emotions. Again, this is one one book that I really urge you all to look at and read through. So we'll come to the, what are the steps of MVP development or steps to actually create new features to an existing products. One is the value for the user. Two is defining your functionality. Three is prioritizing your MVP features and testing your MVP, and then you are going to examine the feedback. And we'll come to each step as we go along. Now, formulating the value of the user. Now, I kept on saying this value, initially a lot, but what this really means. So you at this stage, you're not testing the idea, you're testing the value. For example, you're not going to your consumers and saying, hey, I know this is the problem that you have, and this is the solution that I've got for you. Do you like it or not? More often than not, coupled with founders' biases that will always be there, you will get a very clear yes or a no answer if you go with a solution. However, the consumer very often is aware of their problems. What are the needs? So you don't tell them why you need to use your product. You tell them how it really helps them. And we'll come to some examples in this area. So at this stage, you really deep dive into areas such as, is there really a need for your product? And this may be really simple, but I have seen many, and I made this mistake myself when I was actually developing, products ground up. There's a lot of biasness to what we want to offer as a solution. And, we really need to deep dive into what is the problem that we are solving for the consumer. how is the consumer actually utilizing other products to actually solve the same problem? And you need to learn more about an end consumer. Learn about the market that you really wish to enter, and why should a consumer actually pay for your product? Yes, he may like it if it's free, but what would he really pay the product from? What are the competitors in the market, and what we can learn? What is the value proposition that you're coming up with? And this would literally be a very detailed discovery exercise that anyone needs to go through, which I would say is 40% of your time spent when you're actually, working on an MVP. And what are some of the steps that you can, take? Surveys, blogs, forums. I found forums a very good source where you can actually get and identify some of the customer pain points. Some niche forums are there where you understand potential problems that customers are facing for the for the value proposition. What are the solutions? I also use social listening tools very often. Social listening tools will actually give you the chatter that is happening for maybe competitor products or similar offerings. There are paid tools. There are some free tools that are available. Even if you actually just go through Facebook or Instagram comments, of some of the competitors, it's really gives you a lot of insight. And consumer interviews. Now, I can't stress this enough that very often we work as founders and say, yes, I definitely know there is a market for my product. And I have spoken to 5 people and they all have said my solution is great. Uh, the thing is, we have to, when we are interviewing, our customers, you need to focus on what we spoke about earlier. Who are the customers that you're targeting? And two, we need to really have a deep dive, honest talk with the customer on their pain points, not on the pitch that you're doing that this is my product, but on the pain points. Take them out for a coffee, ask them about, what they, what, what are they willing to pay for this, for this pain point? What are they using? So literally deep dive interviews have really helped, and I can't stress this enough, but this is really, really important from a discovery point of view. And what really emanates from all of this is an outcome, and that outcome will be a hypothesis in terms of what value does your product really provide to the consumers. And again, let me talk about value. So, let me show this via an example. So you will see this online very often. You'll see Zappos, one of the most brilliant cases of an MVP. And Zappos is in fact bought over by Amazon in 2009. It's more than $1 billion in terms of valuation. It's still the #1 shoe store in US. And when Zappo was launching, back in 2000, 5, 6, 7, at that time buying shoes online was not really, people were not comfortable. If you asked me at that point of time, I would never buy shoes online because I wanted to, test them, etc. It was a very far off idea. But what did the founder really do to test his idea? He basically, Nick Schwimborn actually tied up with a local store in San Francisco. He went to the physical store, just took photographs of the shoes that are there in the store, and he posted a simple, 2-3 pages website. He posted the shoes there. And when someone actually bought the shoes from the website and clicked on the buy button, he would go back to the physical store, buy that shoe, and then ship the shoe to the user. So, what essentially he did is he's testing the hypotheses. He's testing the hypotheses that people are interested to buy shoes online. If he was testing his solution, saying that yes, people are willing to buy shoes online, and this is my solution. Now let me, see what I get, would be a very different way of him launching an MVP. He would have had a beautiful website, and he would have had large number of shoes that are available, etc. But he wanted to test the hypotheses that would people be interested in buying, shoes online. I am going to, at this stage, just see if there are any specific questions on Zappos. Okay, there are many questions because I just want to make sure that this concept is clear with everyone before we move on, because we'll be using this across our, our thought process. So,
I'm sorry, there are questions in the chat box. I request everyone to please shoot questions in the Q&A tab, so it's very easy and smooth for Ativi as well.
Sure. Yeah, so while the questions keep coming in, you can see this. In fact, online, there is actually the site of Zappo, which was there, which he had actually launched. You'll see it's very simplistic. I couldn't put it out here for privacy reasons, but it's very much there for you to view. Look at PillPack. PillPack is, again, a company that is bought over by Amazon, above $1 billion. And the same question that we spoke about initially, right? Understanding the pain points of the consumers. PillPack is very simple. Basically, in the US, it is members are basically shipped their prescriptions in small pouches. So they know for day one, today is Thursday, I have to take so many medicines, and it comes in a nice sleek pouch, and for a sachet for each day. And when PillPack was launching, they used the lemonade stand approach. So literally, the CEO just took like a branded kiosk in a mall, where he would just talk to potential customers, understanding why would they need their prescriptions to be shipped to them. Why would such a service be of value to them? What are the pain points in actually having 10 prescriptions in a day, and then understanding how do they manage their prescriptions for the day? There's many options available, right? You also have small boxes where you can actually remove pills and put them for day 1, day 2, day 3, etc. But he used this approach where he actually stood there and only asked questions from potential customers via this stall that was laid out in a mall. So we will move to some of the key functionalities. So you've got this, you've created a hypothesis. Now is the time where you will actually define your user flow. So you've said yes, you've understood that consumers, at a certain, you have your hypotheses. They want to test whether they want to buy their shoes online. You would ask a simple question saying that, what is the single most action that I want my users to accomplish to test that hypothesis? And this would be your main features. And what would the other features do in order to complete the action? Now, what I mean by this, so if I was testing the same hypothesis, consumers want to buy my shoes online, my main single important action is for the user to come to my site and just click on the buy button. However, that's my main feature, but there would be many other features that need to support that particular feature, right? He's not just going to come to your site and click on a buy button. So what you would do next is to actually list down the call to actions. You list down all the actions that you would primarily want to test that hypothesis. So to give you an example, in order for him to buy and click on the buy call to action, he would need to browse shoes. He would need to choose shoes. He would need to place an order. He would need to track the orders, maybe to a certain extent. He would need to manage orders, and you would need to receive the order and then go back to the store and buy that shoe and ship it out. However, you would also come across many actions that would you think are important, but maybe not really relevant to test your hypotheses for the call to action to the buy button. For example, filtering by type of shoes. Now think of it from that point of view. You're talking about 2005, 2006, where the online shoe buying was not like a natural habit. If you were supposed to launch this right now, as I said, you would need to have baseline features that are existing, and then offer the delightful features above that. So you would have filter features, compare shoes, etc. There are many actions that you would think that are important, but at this point, as a product person, as a founder, you would need to really be focused into what are some of the key features, and what are just the enough features that you would need to actually get your hypotheses tested. And after you've actually decided your key functionalities, is when you will move to your next point, which is how do you prioritize your features. So we use something called a story mapping technique, and I find this really powerful. It's very simple. Basically, what you do is you see on top is you create this as per a user flow. So you have your user flows that are there on top. So in this case, there would be he needs to find shoes, he needs to buy shoes, he needs to there has to be a manage order, receive order. However, within these key actions, also there will be a list of features. Uh, I'll give you an example. For example, buy shoes is extremely important. To buy shoes, there would be many features. He needs to buy via paying by cash. He needs to buy via paying by credit card. He should be able to buy via a debit card, for example. There could be multiple ways he can do that action, and you will need to decide whether which of those features are really critical for you, and which can be moved. So your actions are defined, but within your actions, your features is what you will prioritize, and that you'll move to the second quadrant, which actually talks about categorizing your features into must have, nice have, and don't care. So this is a simple Eisenhower type of a metrics which I use still, and which is used there. There are lots of priority metrics that I use, but during an MVP development, this metrics really helps to identify which are your high impact and high urgency items that would help you test your hypotheses. And post that, you'll define the scope for your MVP. When you define the scope for your first version of the product, and then you'll build your MVP. So this is where you'll actually say, okay, within fine shoes, I really require him to just browse through shoes. There is a feature that tells that you should be able to filter shoes by heels which are 2 inches, 3 inches, or sport shoes. That's important, but maybe it can come later, right? So you will actually prioritize within these actions what are the high priority features and what are the low priority features. So this will actually be your MVP scope that would come out from this exercise. And once you've prioritized all the features and you've defined your scope, let's see how some of the other companies have done something like this. Look at the case of Spotify. So Spotify, now this is internal, right? Spotify actually at a point of time, yes, there was iTunes and everything, but Spotify just wanted to, test, consumers were used to buying their CDs, right? We owned those CDs. Those were our CDs. But the hypothesis that Spotify started with, that is fast and stable music streaming even technically possible, right? I want the same quality as a CD. I may not want to own the product, but whenever I want, I should be able to stream the music. And for that, what Spotify really did is their developers just ripped some music that they had, they put it on the laptop, and they started experimenting to find ways that they could make the playback even faster. And again, when I'm saying learning, for them, the metrics that they were using is how many milliseconds does it take when I press play to actually hear the music. So they had a clear metrics that they were trying to improve, which is the milliseconds that it takes once a person presses play to actually hear the music. And after that, we all know what's how Spotify has grown into in the product domain. I want to also add, like, for example, Spotify right now, it's really focusing on podcasts. So this MVP is not, it is initially when the product launched, but for every stage of their product development, they are testing with the consumer. So when they actually launched the podcast, I remember hearing, I as a user could actually upload my podcast for free for a certain number of minutes, etc. So they're always testing at every stage to understand, yes, if you're launching podcasts, what is the number of people who are willing to actually put up and right now it's free their podcasts on Spotify. So it's always a journey of build, measure, learn, build, measure, learn, that is followed for most, for product development. Tesla. So Tesla has deep pockets, right? And we all know this, that yeah, they can also build things completely ground up, and they've done that also. But when they launched their high-end car, their hypothesis was that high-end consumers would be willing to buy electric cars. Simple, and that's same like are people willing to buy shoes online. So instead of actually creating the design, ground up, they basically procured rights for of Lotus Elise, and they basically had the chassis which is already designed, and all they did is put their own battery, their own motor, and sold it at $100,000. And they started with the premium category, and they tried to see how the production sale was. They did have all the money to actually build the chassis themselves, etc. But this is what helped them quickly launch the product in the market and quickly get feedback. We know where Tesla really is at this point of time. So I am going to move through some of the the ways that you can actually test your MVP. And there are it's saying my internet is unstable. Am I audible, Ankita?
Yes, Atbi.
Okay, great. So yes, so there are a couple of ways or techniques that you can use to basically test your MVP. So one of them is the A/B testing. A/B testing is pretty simple. Basically, if there are two hypotheses that you're testing, for example, are you testing, do your consumers find the value of speed more important, or they find the value of endurance, for example, more important? There are two values that you're testing with the consumer. You literally can do a A/B test, and it could be simple as having two banners that are running, with different value propositions that are showing on digital properties. And there are multiple tools which value proposition is clicked most by the user in a live environment. So if you have more click-throughs on speed, that's a value proposition that people would resonate more with. And then you have Wizard of Oz. So Wizard of Oz is actually for anyone who's actually knows about the story. Basically, in the end, the wizard really turns out to be like this old man who's hiding behind the curtain and pretending to be a scary green head. And this is the whole concept. So in Wizard of Oz, the consumer thinks that everything is basically perfect on the front, and at the back end, there's a lot that is being done manually. So Zappos is a clear example of Wizard of Oz, where
Atibi, now we are losing you like on and off. Hi, Atibi, can you hear me?
in the visualize and share. Now, visualize and share basically means
we lost you for about a minute, maybe 30 seconds.
okay. So I will just repeat what I said on Wizard of Oz. So on Wizard of Oz, am I audible now, Ankita?
Yes, you are. You can even I would suggest if your network is a bit wobbly, you can switch off your camera. Maybe it might help, just a suggestion.
Okay, so we'll come back to, so Wizard of Oz basically is where everything in the front looks like it's perfect. So it's for the consumer, everything is fine. At the behind the scene, there's a lot that is going on manually. So look at it from the point of view of Zappos, right? Where the user thinks that this is a site, I can actually purchase my shoes online. But at the back end, there are actually someone going to a physical store, buying that shoe, physically shipping that shoe to you via some other third party. So there's a lot that's happening manually at the back end. So Wizard of Oz is more of like a manual first MVP. And then you have visualize and share. Visualize and share is basically to gauge people's reactions to an idea. You would have maybe a video that goes out, or you would have some form of a okay. I can think of MI. So if you know that, Closer Home, MI has a site which actually is a crowdsourcing, crowdfunding site within their site, which basically they announce launches of products. So their vacuum cleaner, which is doing really well right now, was one of the products which was actually put up there on their crowdfunding site. And only when they get interest and people are willing to fund for the product is when they actually manufacture and develop the product. So they've already got an interest from the audience who is willing to buy, purchase, and pay money for for the product. And then there's landing page MVPs. Now, again, landing page, when we use landing page primarily, it is a way that you get some form of what do I say, sign ups or some kind of uh, acceptance that they are willing to take the product ahead. So it could be a landing page which has a call to action and a person can fill the form. And you'll see that very often in many of your products. And I think I have an example. Yeah. So for example, you look at Buffer. So you all must have heard about Buffer. It's a great tool that allows you to actually schedule your social media post initially, and now there's multiple other things that you can do with it. And so if I have Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, etc., I can actually schedule my post across and do that on this app. And when they launched, they had a simple landing page which had the value proposition upfront. So on the landing page, the value proposition was, add your tweet, choose time to tweet, relax. And then they wanted to test whether a consumer was willing to buy that plan and was willing to pay for that plan. So they had a call to action button, and then they had the subscription based pricing. And what really happened is you could actually submit your response. So you say that, okay, fine, we are working to improve our platform, add your email address, and we will keep you updated. So as a consumer in this, they have, what they've done is they've actually got data that validates the fact that people, yes, are liking this value proposition, and two, that they are willing to actually pay for this value proposition. So it's a simple landing page which actually then gives you the email ID, and then later on with the email ID you can do lots, right? You can reach out to the consumer once your product is already completely built. You can say that, hey, this is what you are interested in, and we've built this for you, and actually make these early adopters, as we were talking, right, the early adopters and the innovators, part of your entire product development process by seeking feedback from them. And another example is also of Dropbox. When Dropbox has launched, they didn't, obviously it's instead of really going into the servers, building on availability, etc., and low latencies, they basically just had a simple video that showcased what will Dropbox really do for you as a consumer. So consumers, they just wanted to test the hypothesis that consumers would want to pay and use for file sync solution. So they didn't come up with the entire solution. They actually came up with a video that showcased how Dropbox is going to help them sync their files, across various networks. In fact, you can still find the video online. If you search on Google, you will get it. I could not show it here. But this is a very clear way of having a way a person can just visualize and share what you're trying to achieve, and get signups. And there was obviously a call to action through the video, and they would get signups before they would launch the product. And uh, I've gone through this. So in the end, we come to this very critical stage, which is, what do you do with everything that you have learned, right? Through your MVP process, by the time you reach this stage, we spoke about build, we spoke about measure, and now when you're talking about learn, what would you really do? Your results of your MVP, for example, if you've reached a targeted number of email IDs that have come to you in the example of Buffer, right? And you have actually reached a stage where you can make a decision about what to do next. either you will preserve your hypotheses, so your hypotheses would have been correct, and you decide to pursue on the same goals, or you would realize that, hey, people were just not interested. I put up the video of Dropbox and no one really signed up. Maybe my value proposition is not resonating. Even the innovators and early adopters are not enjoying or really caring about my solution. So you would actually pivot. You would move to the to your next hypothesis. And whatever and obviously you've gained a lot of knowledge. You've actually discarded some of the hypotheses that you have during your earlier stages, and you know what doesn't work. So now at this stage you can reset, and you can correct your course, and you can again go back to building a new hypothesis, building testing your hypotheses, measuring and learning from it. So this in effect becomes more of a feedback loop. It keeps going on and on, and till you actually there is no product development which is complete, but you will use this as an iterative process throughout your journey, to make sure that you are building, keeping the consumer value in mind. And yes, with that, I have, I hope I've given you some of the concepts. I actually wanted to see if there are any questions out here. 1 minute. Okay, so there are lots of questions. It's good. Actually, maybe I should have taken the questions during the presentation.
Atibi, there are one or two very interesting questions I have just filtered. Can we start with that?
Sure.
All right. So there's one question coming from the audience. Customers at times don't know what they want. How will we ensure MVP is successful in such?
Yeah. Yes, I think that's a very good question. Ankita, am I still audible? Is it fine?
Yes, you are. Yes.
Okay, great. So I'll just switch on a video. So I think that's really important. Yeah, and I've been asked this very often. And the first time I was asked, I was completely caught off guard. But you're right. Very often consumers don't know what they want. And what really happens is, are we going to them and just offering them the solution, and realizing that this is, they say, okay, great, more often than not they'll say, yes, this is a great idea. So very often as founders, as entrepreneurs, we say, my idea is definitely required because my consumer has said that they want this, this is definitely a great solution. But I've realized that consumers might not know what they want, but they have a very, very clear idea about what is their pain points, and what are some of their challenges that they are facing. And when you deep dive and really talk to them closely, you will be more familiar with what really are their pain points. So they definitely know what their pain points are, and what's really sucking up a lot of their time or efforts. They might not know about what the final solution would be that would solve for it. And I don't know whether many of you must have heard about the first principles thinking, which is actually made very popular by Elon Musk now, where he talks about first principle thinking as in you basically think like a scientist. So you have absolutely no assumptions that the consumer wants this. You don't go and look at what the competitor has. You basically go with a complete clean slate like a scientist, without any without any judgments, without any biases, and you really dig deep to really understand what is it that I'm trying to solve for. What are the what are the challenges, why are those challenges really existing? Are they even big enough challenges that I should be uh, someone is saying I can't hear.
I can hear you.
Okay, so then maybe it's a network. Let me just shut my video if that's going to be a yeah. So maybe a first thinking approach is something that can be adopted very well in this scenario.
Okay.
Um,
Would you like to choose the questions, Atipi, or you want me to take up?
yeah, I'll just go through these question. What are the major challenges in MVP? Okay. I think there are lots of challenges in MVP. I think the biggest challenge in MVP that I face as a product person is really defining what is enough. And I face this very often where there are very um, tough conversations that happen between engineering, salespeople, product folks on what is really enough. And they will always be asked for expanding the scope of your feature, expanding the scope of your requirement. And the sales folks will always say that this is really critical, and yes, they are closest to the market, so you have to listen to them. But I think the most major challenge as a product person is to really think, what are some of the key action points that I'm trying to test, and what are some of the key areas that I am trying to build my MVP basis the hypothesis. So literally saying no very often, like I'm known, it's as a product person, it's one of the very important qualities is the ability to literally say no to many of the features that come your way. And yes, they would be in the pipeline, and that's where that prioritization metrics that I told you was really important and very helpful in your development process. How do we know that we are doing enough and not more than that? So I think this is to some extent, again, how do we know that we are doing enough and we are not doing more than that? I think in this case, very clearly, there is no right and wrong answer, and I think it all depends on the product that you're building, and again on the market that you're already available in. Enough will be very clearly defined by the number of products and your market landscape and the competitive set and what your consumer is already used to. And more than that would be your bells and whistles, which would not primarily add anything. And I think Akash, another thing that I think is very important to understand if you're not doing more than that is if you are adding features which is not giving you any learning. For example, you're launching a feature which you cannot get customer concrete feedback during an MVP, or it is not measurable via any tool that you have used at the back end for metrics. Then that is something that is going over and above what enough should really be. That's one of the that's one of the ways that I see what is more than the enough bottom. You have to measure everything. Um, uh, oh, this is very interesting. How do we communicate with end users that the product they are using is an MVP and not a complete specced out product? I think this is great, and I think this happens, very often. But when you are communicating to the users, there are various ways. If you are at a stage where you are having feedback, which is very, a close group feedback, where there is, you're having detailed conversations, and obviously that's the conversation that you have. But if you're using any of the other methods that I spoke about, which is A/B testing or landing page, I think at that stage you need to tell your consumers that there is more coming up, and we are working on it. So I don't know whether this was caught in Buffer, but if you look at this in Buffer, they actually, you see it on the side. They've actually said this, that we are working to improve our platform. So you have to be honest with the user, saying that that this is something that we are going to be kind of working on. Um, So there's someone who's asked if Zappos is acquired by Amazon, how do we say it holds number one position in that industry? I'm talking about online shoe purchases. Zappos still is one of the sites that is used in the US for online shoe purchases. It's still very uh, uh, you know relevant for the market. Okay, this is a very interesting one. How do you tackle the feeling of insecurity when developing a product that someone else might do it before? And also not let this feeling come in between your product development and make you invest your money and effort on the product with this fear. This is when you are going for your own startup and not developing a product under a big brand or an employee. I think, Utkarsh, this is a great question. And I think a very key question that every early stage startup founder has. To be very frank, this fear of someone else, I have come across very few areas where there is no competitor, right? So there is always someone who will be building maybe faster, better, etc. from you, or not better, but maybe faster than you, and that's always going to be a moot point. But I think at this stage, it's really tricky. So, um, when you have limited number of amount of funds, and you want to make sure that you are developing, and you are maybe competing with big brands. I think what's really critical is to really, build quick. And when I'm saying build quick, I don't mean build the entire product quick, but I would say iterate really quickly and be very close to the market and understand where your competitor or your market is going through. So you might need to have a closer looped feedback of building, iterating, getting feedback. I would also suggest that you be very focused on the consumers that you are targeting. Do not get completely consumers who are not your core consumers. Do not get influenced by their feedback. That's again a big mistake that I have made, where I'm not going for the actual core consumers who are going to consume my products, and I'm listening to feedback by the skeptics, or the laggards, as I spoke about. So be very tight with the people that you're sharing your MVP, be very quick in getting their feedback, and be very quick in actually incorporating those learnings in your product development process, Utkarsh. Um, we have 2 minutes. Uh, Okay, so how do we validate an idea hypotheses with users from a different geography? I think this is simple. If you look at any of those tests which I spoke about, A/B testing, or I spoke about landing page, I think those can be go across geographies, right? You don't it's you could have it run on sites which are consumed by the audience that you are targeting. So you can actually have your banners, or actually have your pages set up for those locations. And I'm assuming then in that case your users also that you are talking to would be from different geographies, so that would be a first set of people that you would share your idea with. Mm. I'm just seeing many of them are there are too many questions, Ankita, but it's good. Any insights into what factors uh, can impact the hypothesis failure? I think very often impact the hypothesis failure, I think, to a very large extent. For me, for example, if the product is very it's before its time, I think that has led to hypothesis failure. I could say I have faced that myself. I remember and that's more related to mobile phones, and I was doing this research, and all the consumers said we don't want this. And actually, when it was launched 10 years back, it's kind of taken, is hitting off the roof. But I would say that maybe the impact, if you are really the market is not ready for your product, then definitely there could be an impact on your failure. Ankita, we are at the top of the hour. There are still many questions, and people have asked if you're going to share the presentation, etc. I leave that to you.
Okay. And if you would want to take one last question, we are good with that, because we started like 2 minutes late. So I'm good. Any last question, or we can wind up?
Yeah, I think someone has asked, how do we set USP of the product if similar type of product is already available? So I think this is really tricky, Gaurav. USP of the product is actually talking about the value proposition, and I don't have enough time for this, but you must take down this name. There's this person called Dan Olson, DANOLSEN. He talks about the value proposition. He talks about product market fit. There are lots of YouTube's videos of his, and you must look at this 45 minutes video where he only talks about how you develop your product market fit in an environment where there are many similar competing products, and how do you create a value proposition. So Dan Olson is one of the key references that you could use. Okay. Okay, so then which are the main key metrics to evaluate success criteria? Also, how can we say that my product is good compared to other competitor? What are the key metrics to evaluate? I think the metrics is all depend, on the hypothesis. So in the case of Zappos, it was the people who actually click on the call to action button. In the case of Buffer, for example, was people who actually put in their email ID. So the key metrics for your success criteria would totally depend on the hypotheses that you're testing. And how can you say that my product is doing better than the competitor? I think I don't know what product you would be talking about, but I think sheer numbers, right? And I think when you're launching, actually, maybe to a very large extent, you cannot compare yourself with established competitors. So you need to have a growth metric set for you and your for your product for quarter, 6 months, a year ahead. So you are literally to a very large extent competing with yourself. And I'm assuming this is, I don't know whether it's an early stage startup or mature market. So I think that would all depend on which part of the ecosystem and market you are belonging to. So Ankita, we are 3 minutes up.
We have so many questions, but we are respecting everyone's time. And first of all, I think I misspoke Atibi's designation. So she's Associate Director Products in Open Global Solutions. So I'm sorry for that. And thank you so much, Atibi, for your wonderful presentation, the kind of examples you've used. I'm sure, like me, every one of us over here, they've learned something new, and they will use it in their professional life for sure. And for the other, in the month of July, we're also having 2 to 3 more sessions. So stay tuned and log into nascom.in/events for the calendar, which will be there updated in the first week of July. Thank you so much, Atibi, and thank you so much, everyone, for coming together and becoming a part of this session.
Thank you, Ankita, and thanks for giving this opportunity. I really enjoyed, and there were a lot of questions, which was very great. Folks, refer to some of the references I've given, will really be helpful, and wish you all the best for your product journey, for your entrepreneurship journey, and really enjoy the session. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye. Take care. Bye.